Berlin, 1923. A loaf of bread costs 200 billion marks. Not 200 marks, not 200,000, 200 billion. Children play with stacks of money like building blocks. Workers collect their wages in wheelbarrows, not because they're rich, but because the bills are worthless. Within a single year, the German mark lost 99.9% of its value. Life savings vanished. The middle class was destroyed, and out of the ashes rose something far darker than poverty. This is the story of the Weimar hyperinflation, the day money died and a nation descended into chaos. And the terrifying part? It didn't happen because of war. It happened because of choices. To understand how Germany's currency collapsed, we need to go back to 1918. World War I is over. Germany has lost, and the victors, France, Britain, the United States, are furious. At the Treaty of Versailles, they impose a punishment designed to cripple Germany for generations. The bill? 132 billion gold marks in reparations. In today's money, that's roughly $400 billion. But here's the catch. Germany's economy is in ruins. Factories are destroyed. Millions of men are dead. Industrial output has collapsed. The country is broke. So the German government faces an impossible choice: default on the debt and face military occupation, or find a way to pay, even if it means destroying their own currency. They chose option 2, and what happened next would become a textbook case in how not to manage a monetary system. In 1921, Germany begins printing money, not to stimulate growth, not to fund innovation, but to pay off foreign debts with paper. Here's how hyperinflation works, in the simplest terms. Imagine an economy as a pie. The pie represents all the goods and services in a country: bread, shoes, houses, labor. The money in circulation represents slices of that pie. If you print more money but the pie stays the same size, each slice becomes worth less. That's inflation. Now imagine you keep printing, exponentially, every day twice as much money as the day before. The pie hasn't grown, but now there are millions of slices. Each one is nearly worthless. That's hyperinflation. And in Germany, this wasn't a slow process. In January 1923, a loaf of bread cost 250 marks. By November, it cost 200 billion marks. Prices doubled every few days. Workers demanded to be paid twice a day, once in the morning, once at lunch, because by evening their wages would be worthless. Money stopped being a store of value. It became kindling. By mid-1923, the German economy had entered freefall. Shopkeepers couldn't keep up with price changes. They stopped labeling products. Instead, they used multipliers, signs that said all prices times 1,000 or times 10,000. Customers rushed into stores the moment they were paid, not because they wanted to buy, because waiting even an hour meant their money would buy half as much. Bartering returned. People traded watches for potatoes, pianos for coal, a fur coat for a sack of flour. The currency had become so unstable that businesses refused to accept it. But the real devastation wasn't in the price tags, it was in the lives. Imagine you're a school teacher. You've saved for 30 years. You have 100,000 marks in the bank, enough to retire comfortably. In January 1923, that money could buy a house. By November, it couldn't buy a loaf of bread. Your entire life's work erased. This happened to millions. The middle class, engineers, doctors, teachers, civil servants, was wiped out overnight. Those who owned hard assets, land, gold, factories, survived. Those who saved in cash were destroyed. And when people lose everything, they look for someone to blame. The Weimar government became a symbol of betrayal. Extremist parties on both the left and right began to rise. One of those parties was led by a failed artist and war veteran named Adolf Hitler. He understood something crucial. People in despair don't want complex economic policy. They want a villain, and they want a savior. In November 1923, the Weimar government finally acted. They introduced a new currency, the Rentenmark. Backed by land and industrial assets, it stabilized almost immediately. The hyperinflation ended, but the damage was done. The social fabric of Germany had been ripped apart. Trust in government, gone. Faith in savings destroyed. The middle class, once the backbone of German society, had been obliterated. And in that vacuum, extremism flourished. By 1933, the Nazi Party had seized power. Historians still debate the causes of World War II, but one thing is certain. The Weimar hyperinflation created the conditions for Hitler's rise. It destroyed faith in democracy, it radicalized millions, and it taught the world a lesson that many have forgotten. When money dies, society follows. So why does this matter today? Because the mechanics of hyperinflation haven't changed. What happened in Weimar Germany wasn't unique. It's happened in Hungary in 1946, in Zimbabwe in 2008, in Venezuela in 2016. And in every case, the cause is the same. Governments printing money to solve problems they can't afford to fix. Now look at the world today. Since 2020, central banks have printed more money than in the entire previous decade. The U.S. money supply increased by 40% in 2 years. The European Central Bank, the Bank of Japan, everyone is printing to pay for COVID relief, to prop up failing banks, to fund deficits that voters won't accept cutting. We're told this is different, that modern monetary policy is sophisticated, that central banks have tools to prevent inflation, and maybe they're right, but the people of Weimar Germany thought their government had it under control too. Here's what most people don't realize. Hyperinflation doesn't start with prices, it starts with trust. When people lose faith in a currency, they dump it, they buy assets, they hoard goods, they flee to foreign money, and that's when the spiral begins. In Germany, the breaking point came when France occupied the Ruhr Valley, Germany's industrial heartland. Production collapsed, the government panicked, and the printing presses went into overdrive. Today, we don't have foreign occupation, but we have mounting debt, political gridlock, and central banks trapped in a corner. The U.S. national debt is $34 trillion and climbing. Entitlement spending is unsustainable, and neither political party has the will to cut it. So what's the solution? Print more money, inflate the debt away, hope the public doesn't notice until it's too late. The scariest part of the Weimar story isn't the hyperinflation itself, it's how fast it happened. For most of 1922, inflation was bad but manageable. People complained, but life went on. Then in early 1923, something snapped. Confidence evaporated, and within months, the currency was worthless. The lesson? Hyperinflation doesn't announce itself. It builds quietly, then it explodes. So what can we learn from Weimar Germany? First, currency is trust, not paper. The moment people stop believing in money, it dies. Second, inflation doesn't destroy the rich, it destroys the savers. Those with assets survive, those with cash are annihilated. And third, the social cost of hyperinflation is catastrophic. It doesn't just make people poor, it makes them desperate, and desperate people do desperate things. Weimar's hyperinflation ended in 1923, but its consequences lasted for decades. The middle class never recovered, the resentment never healed, and within 10 years, the world was at war again. We live in an age of unprecedented money printing, record debt, and fragile trust. The question isn't if another currency will collapse, it's when, and whether we'll recognize the warning signs before it's too late. So here's my question for you. Do you think hyperinflation could happen in a major economy today, or have we really learned the lesson? Drop your answer in the comments. And if this video made you think twice about the money in your pocket, hit subscribe, because this story isn't over.